A 12-year-old girl with nothing but a hammer and an unshakable dream outsmarted the world's finest engineers and changed history forever. In the forgotten stillness of a dusty scrapyard, young Abigail Jensen spent her days reviving broken machines. Where others saw rust and ruin, she saw puzzles begging to be solved. From her late grandfather, a brilliant mechanic once cast aside by the very company that built its fortune on his ideas, she inherited not just tools, but vision. One blistering September afternoon, fate rolled in behind tinted glass. A sleek limousine sputtered to a stop, its powerful CEO trapped inside, minutes away from losing a deal worth millions. Panic hung heavy until Abigail, cap pulled low and grease-stained hands steady, stepped forward. Quietly, she said the words no one expected. "I can fix it." Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss tomorrow's special video. Now, let's step back into the story. A girl with hair like fire stood small among giants, yet ready to reshape the world. The scrapyard was Abigail Jensen's playground, her school, her universe. To others, it was where machines went to die. To her, it was where new life began. At 12 years old, with fire-red hair tucked beneath a battered cap, grease on her hands and determination in her eyes, Abigail was building something no one else dared imagine. An engine born from her mind and her late grandfather's notebooks. That September afternoon, the silence of rusted metal was broken by the purr of a limousine. Long, black, and hopelessly out of place, it limped into Miller's scrapyard on a shredded tire. The chauffeur fought with the lug nuts, cursing under his breath, while inside sat a silver-haired CEO, Charles Thompson, seconds away from losing a $10 million deal. Abigail approached. "Maybe I can help," the chauffeur scoffed. Thompson barely glanced at her. But with a hammer, a chisel, and confidence well beyond her years, Abigail freed the stripped lug nuts in minutes. The chauffeur stood stunned, while Thompson's impatience shifted to intrigue. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. "My grandpa," Abigail replied. "He was a mechanic, the best there was." The name Jensen hit him like a blow. Years ago, he'd signed the order that ended her grandfather's career at Thompson Aeronautics. Grateful but uneasy, Thompson offered money. Abigail shook her head. "Grandpa said you help people because it's right, not for a reward." That simple refusal pierced deeper than any rejection he'd known. He insisted on driving her home. Inside the limousine's leather and glass, Abigail spoke of her project, an engine unlike any on the market, part gasoline, part electric, switching seamlessly between the two. Her voice burned with excitement. Thompson's smile faded. He was an engineer by training, and what she described was something his own top-paid team had failed to achieve. At the Jensen home, modest but warm, Abigail's mother welcomed him. Photographs of Abigail's grandfather in uniform hung on the wall, medals gleaming. A war hero, a man Thompson had cast aside. Sitting in that small living room, Thompson felt, for the first time in years, the weight of his decisions. Abigail pulled him to the shed. Inside was no child's workshop, but a cathedral of invention. Tools hung in order, parts labeled, and in the center stood her engine, gleaming with raw genius. She handed him her grandfather's notebooks, pages alive with designs decades ahead of their time. Thompson's breath caught. There, in faded ink, was the solution his company's engineers had chased in vain. "This is incredible," he whispered. Abigail's eyes shone. "I just need the right alternator. Then I can finish it." Thompson stayed far longer than planned, listening as the girl explained her vision with a clarity that humbled him. As he left, he asked about her father. Her mother's smile faltered. "He was a machinist. The plant closed. He's been searching for work ever since." Thompson nodded, silent. In Abigail's grease-stained hands, he saw not just her grandfather's legacy, but the future his own empire had been blind to. Charles Thompson sat in his limousine, the city lights flickering past the tinted glass. But his mind wasn't on the deal he had just missed. For once, he didn't care about the $10 million lost in a single evening. His thoughts were consumed by a 12-year-old girl in grease-stained overalls and the battered notebooks of her late grandfather. Abigail Jensen. The name wouldn't leave him. Neither would the image of the shed filled with genius ideas his company had discarded when he laid off her grandfather years ago. The next morning, Thompson strode into the boardroom with fire in his eyes. His engineers sat waiting, tired and defeated. For 2 years, they had battled the XT-7, the crown jewel engine meant for a military drone contract. But the XT-7 was a disaster: unstable pressure, overheating, abysmal efficiency. They were 1 week away from losing not just the contract, but the entire company. Thompson tossed the blueprints onto the table. Gentlemen, we're standing on the edge of ruin. The XT-7 is a $50 million failure. If we don't fix this in 7 days, we lose everything. The lead engineer, Peterson, cleared his throat. Sir, the fault lies in the fuel injection system. We've tried everything. It can't be solved in a week. We need months. We don't have months, Thompson snapped. For the first time in his career, he admitted the truth. He had no solution. But he remembered Abigail, the way she spotted the flaw in a set of lug nuts with a glance, the way her young mind had grasped engine theory beyond his most decorated staff. It was madness, but he made the call. Harrison, he told his chauffeur, go fetch the girl. By afternoon, the limousine rolled up to the Jensen home. Abigail burst out the front door, toolbox in hand, her mother close behind with anxious eyes. Abigail, this is too much, Mary whispered. These are powerful men. You're just a child, Abigail hugged her tightly. It's just an engine, Mom. I can handle it. Moments later, she was seated at the long, polished boardroom table of Thompson Aeronautics. The suits stared in disbelief. MIT degrees, Caltech diplomas, decades of experience, and now a little girl in patched overalls stood before them. With all due respect, sir, Peterson sneered, what exactly is this child supposed to do that we haven't? Thompson's reply was steel. She fixed my limousine when you would have failed. If you're smart, you'll listen. Abigail leaned over the schematic spread across the table. She studied in silence, then pointed at a single detail. Your fuel injector is too complicated. Too many moving parts, it's creating a feedback loop. That's why your pressure is unstable. The room fell still. The engineers exchanged uneasy glances. Abigail continued, voice steady. You need to simplify. Direct injection. Switch from titanium alloy to tungsten carbide. It won't crack under stress. And here, she tapped the schematic, you've got a resonant frequency in the fuel line. Add a dampener. That'll stabilize the whole system. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then whispers spread like wildfire. They had missed it. She hadn't. Peterson laughed bitterly. A dampener? That's your solution? Sometimes, Abigail replied. The simplest fix is the right one. Thompson's voice thundered. Build the prototype, now. What followed was 6 hours of frantic work in the R&D lab. Abigail was given a workstation, and soon the best engineers in the world found themselves taking instructions from a child. She stripped the injector, rebuilt it, fabricated a new nozzle, and installed the dampener herself. As she worked, she spoke of engines as though they were music, each part a note, each system a symphony. The hardened men who had forgotten why they became engineers listened, spellbound, like students at the feet of a master. Finally, Abigail wiped her greasy hands and stepped back. It's ready, the engine sputtered to life. For a breathless second, nothing. Then the hum smoothed, steady and strong. The monitors lit up with impossible readings, stable pressure, cool temperature, efficiency beyond anything they had ever achieved. The lab erupted in cheers. Grown men clapped, laughed, and embraced. For the first time in months, hope had returned. Thompson descended from the observation deck, his face alight with pride. He placed a hand on Abigail's shoulder. You did it. You saved us, she smiled softly. I just finished what my grandpa started. From the back, Peterson sneered. A fluke. She got lucky. Thompson turned on him, voice sharp as a blade. No, Peterson. It proves we've been arrogant and blind. Genius can come from anywhere, even a scrapyard. And respect must be earned no matter the age. He paused, eyes hard. You're fired. The room fell silent. Abigail Jensen had not only saved a company, she had rewritten its future. Get out of my building. Peterson's face froze. 20 years with the company, the highest salary on the payroll, and now humiliated, dismissed in front of his peers by a CEO taking orders from a 12-year-old girl. Rage and shame burned in him as he stalked out. The engineers watched in silence, their fear melting into quiet relief. Peterson's reign was over. Mr. Thompson turned back to Abigail. I have a proposition, not as an intern, not as an assistant. I want you as a full-time consultant. Your own lab, your own team, access to everything we have. I want you to help us build the future. Abigail blinked. She had come to fix an engine, not to be offered a career. I'm only 12. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Thompson urged, his eyes warm, and I'll make you a promise. Your family will never struggle again. I'll set up a trust for your education, wherever you want to go. And I'll give you what money can't buy, the chance to change the world. Then he turned to his staff. The design that saved the XT7 came from the notebooks of a man we wronged, Arthur Jensen, Abigail's grandfather. As of today, I reinstate him posthumously with full back pay and benefits. His name will live on. Every future engine will carry it, the Jensen injector. When Mary and David Jensen were brought to the facility, emotion overwhelmed them. Mary wept, grief for her father mixing with pride for her daughter. David, beaten down by years of rejection, straight and tall, eyes shining. Thompson clasped his hand. A man who raised a girl like Abigail deserves a place here. We need a machinist in prototyping, if you're interested. David could only nod, too choked to speak. Abigail saw the tears in her parents' eyes, the admiration in the engineers, and the change in Thompson himself. She realized this was more than a job, it was destiny. Yes, she said clearly. I'll do it. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Thompson Aeronautics secured the billion-dollar contract, the XT7 with the Jensen injector hailed as a marvel of engineering. Abigail became a global sensation, the girl genius who saved a corporate giant. Yet she remained herself, splitting her life between middle school and her gleaming new lab, where a hand-picked team of engineers worked under her direction. Her parents thrived, too. David excelled in prototyping, finally respected for his craft. Mary poured her heart into a community garden, creating a space where neighbors grew food and friendships. For the first time in years, the Jensen household was filled with warmth and laughter. Thompson changed as well. The hardened CEO became a benefactor, founding the Arthur Jensen Foundation to support young inventors from humble backgrounds. Under his leadership, Thompson Aeronautics became a company defined not only by profit, but by people. 1 year later, in Abigail's lab, christened Abigail's Sandbox, Thompson entered carrying a small velvet box. Inside was the company's highest honor, the Thompson Award for Innovation, given only 3 times in 50 years. He pinned it to her overalls, his voice thick. We usually give this at the end of a career, but you've earned it. Abigail, thank you. You reminded me that the most valuable thing isn't money or power, it's a good idea and a good heart. Abigail's eyes filled. Around her, the lab buzzed with young engineers chasing dreams. She saw the future, hopeful, alive, and realized it had all begun in a scrapyard with a hammer, a notebook, and a girl who refused to give up. The world of corporate aerospace was ruthless, and Thompson Aeronautics had finally met its greatest threat, Vanguard Dynamics. Vanguard's CEO, Marcus Thorne, had once been Thompson's brightest protege. Brilliant but corrupt, he left under accusations of theft and built a company with one goal: crush his former mentor. For years, Vanguard was a nuisance. But when Thompson's XT7 engine powered by the Jensen injector stunned the industry, Thorne struck back. Rumors spread through the press, claims that the injector was stolen, that its efficiency ratings were lies, that the engine was unstable. Then came his boldest move, unveiling Vanguard's Vindicator engine at a trade show. It was a near-perfect copy of the XT7. Thorne arrogantly declared Thompson had stolen his design. The fallout was immediate. Thompson Aeronautics stock collapsed, and the military announced the drone contract was under review. The future of the company hung by a thread. In an emergency boardroom meeting, the air was heavy with fear. "Thorne is trying to bury us," Thompson said grimly. "We can't just fight rumors. We need innovation, something Vanguard can't match." Slowly, all eyes turned toward Abigail. The 12-year-old prodigy sat at the far end of the table, the weight of their desperation pressing on her. She thought of her grandfather, her family, and her team who trusted her. She drew a deep breath. "Yes," she said firmly. "I can do it." The sandbox lab became a war room. Coffee cups piled high, the hum of machines filled the air, and the once playful energy gave way to relentless urgency. Abigail worked without sleep, eyes red as she wrestled with the XT7's greatest weakness, its heat. She knew if she could cool the engine more efficiently, she could unlock more power. But thermodynamics was merciless. Every answer created 2 more problems. One night, exhausted at her desk, Abigail was startled when Thompson appeared with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He sat beside her, watching the holographic engine spin in the air. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said gently. "I have to," she whispered. "Everyone's counting on me." Thompson told her a story from his youth, how obsession had blinded him until his mentor forced him to visit an art museum. There, in the curve of a sculpture, he found inspiration. "You're a brilliant engineer, Abigail," he said softly. "But you've forgotten how to play." He smiled. "Tomorrow we're going to the Air and Space Museum." No engines, no schematics, just airplanes. The next day, among aviation's ghosts, Abigail rediscovered wonder. She marveled at the Wright Flyer, the Spirit of St. Louis, the rocket plane that broke the sound barrier. And then, standing before a W-2 P-51 Mustang, she froze. Its cooling system was simple yet ingenious. Radiator fins cooled by the plane's slipstream. "That's clever," she murmured. And then it hit her. The breakthrough she'd been chasing. Her eyes lit with fire. "I've got it." They rushed back to the lab. Abigail's idea was daring. Micro-channeled fins, made of a new conductive alloy, integrated into the XT-7's housing and cooled by the drone's own airflow. Inspired not by complex simulations but by elegant simplicity, for 48 frantic hours, the team worked. They fabricated, rewrote software, reassembled. Then came the test. The modified XT-7 roared to life. Numbers spiked. It ran cooler, quieter, and delivered 15% more power. Not just an upgrade, an entirely new engine. The company erupted in celebration. Despair had turned to triumph. Days later, in the boardroom, once filled with dread, Thompson stood tall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, voice ringing with pride, "I give you the XT-8, the most advanced, efficient, and powerful engine in its class. An engine that will secure our contract and redefine aerospace itself." He turned to Abigail, sitting shyly at the end of the table. "And we owe it all to this young lady, who reminded us that the best ideas don't come from fear, but from imagination." The boardroom erupted in applause. Mr. Thompson raised his glass high. "To Abigail Jensen," he said, "the heart and soul of Thompson Aeronautics." The engineers and executives cheered. Abigail, just 12, blushed as she realized she was no longer seen as a child, but as an innovator who had saved them all. The unveiling of the XT-8 engine was more than a test. It was a battle. The military, journalists, and industry leaders watched as the engine roared to life, flawless. Numbers streamed across giant screens. Power, efficiency, stability, beyond anything ever built. Then Thompson introduced her. "The breakthrough came not from a boardroom," he said, "but from one brilliant young mind. Our lead innovator, Miss Abigail Jensen." Gasps filled the room as Abigail stepped up. Before she could speak, Marcus Thorne stood. "This is a farce," he shouted. "A child cannot be responsible for this. It's a trick." Silence fell. Abigail placed a calm hand on Thompson's arm and looked Thorne straight in the eye. "Genius doesn't care about age," she said, "and truth doesn't care about doubt. The science speaks for itself." She explained her design with simple, clear words, turning thermodynamics into wonder. When she finished, the hall erupted with applause. Thorne, red-faced, screamed, "Lies!" But Thompson revealed the truth: stolen schematics, hidden emails, digital receipts. Proof that Thorne had built his empire on theft from Arthur Jensen, Abigail's late grandfather. "You didn't just steal from us," Thompson thundered. "You stole from a dead man's legacy." The fallout was instant. Vanguard collapsed. Thorne disappeared in disgrace. 3 years later, Abigail, now 15, stood beside the XT-10 drone, teaching scholarship students under the Arthur Jensen Foundation. The drone lifted silently into the twilight sky, a silver star against the fading light. It wasn't just a machine. It was a promise kept, a legacy honored, and proof that one girl with fire in her heart could change the future.